Hey, good morning, everybody. Today is step 2 episode of HiFive Live's Stepping Toward Christ 12 Steps in 12 Weeks Addiction Recovery episode number 2. I think I already mentioned that. Anyway, if you are live watching this, go ahead and chime in. Let me know that you're there. Let me know where you're from. And also curious to find out how many of you are uh, struggling with something that you're trying to work on, or are you here to try to help someone else? That would be really nice to know who the audience is watching so that I can customize the message. So I wanted to just go back and reiterate a tiny bit on step 1, which was last week, which is when I got to that point, I finally recognized that I had a problem. I couldn't hide it anymore. I couldn't justify it anymore. And I had known I had a problem for a while, but for that admission to be on the soul level, I just knew that my efforts were not going to work. I needed more help, and this applied for my chemical dependency addictions, any sexual compulsivity, compulsive overeating, applied to caffeine, coffee, giving up cigarettes, changing my limiting beliefs, self-hatred, depression, anxiety. Oh, depression and anxiety were huge for me, and these steps have applied. So, the challenge I had when I got to step 2 after admitting I had a problem was that I kind of thought I already had step 2 licked, which is, come to believe that God can restore you to sanity and spiritual health and to abundance and wellness. And so because I grew up with faith and served voluntarily for 2 years in Brazil, helping others to connect with God and to connect with Christ. I have a strong faith in my family. And so I kind of just thought, yeah, step 2 that's licked. I'm dialed there. Let's move on to the next steps. But and I also wondered, how does this apply to my addiction? How does my faith apply to my addiction? Because really, I just need to stop using drugs, or I need to stop overeating, or I need to stop my sugar addiction, or whatever the case might have been at the time. And those were my barriers. Those were my barriers. I kind of thought, I remember my first treatment experience where we were talking about God. I sat in that room and the topic came up, and I kind of felt like I was above everybody else because I already had an understanding of God, and I was like, okay, yeah, step 2 is for those guys. And all those beliefs effectively blocked me off from accessing the power to overcome my addictions, and so I stayed sick. And whatever you're struggling with, or you might be struggling with an addicted loved one, step 2 absolutely applies, because the questions that I pose to anyone who's like, yeah, this might be good for someone else, but it doesn't necessarily apply to me, is that, first of all, addiction affects the mind, body, and the spirit, and if we don't address the spiritual side of it, our ability to tap into long-term sobriety is limited. And what's more important is the emotional sobriety. And who doesn't need emotional sobriety? Who doesn't need more peace in their life and more serenity in their life and more self-confidence and self-love? So, and furthermore, if you already have faith and you're like, yeah, I already got that. I go to church. I serve people. I read the Bible. I'm in the scriptures. I've already got my faith. But you have anxiety or you have fear. I'll never forget when my sponsor said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "Well, of course I do. Yeah, absolutely." And they said, "Then why all this fear?" And that question kind of stumped me. If I have faith, why do I have all this fear? I have all this anxiety about my work, and I have all this anxiety about my finances, all this anxiety about my weight, and I pose the same question to you: is, do you have faith? And if the answer is yes, then I ask, why all this fear? So, step 2 is about hope, which is a component of faith in my experience, in my opinion. So as I really struggled with this, I was on my step 2 in my 5th treatment program, and I was asked to go through the assignments of step 2, and and that process was to really define and open up this relationship with a power greater than myself, and one that I could trust. Because the idea is not just to say, yeah, I understand faith in God, but it's more about understanding and creating a personal relationship that we can trust. Because step 3 is where we're going to be asked to put our lives in His care, to turn our will, not just our lives, but our will, turn our very desires of what we want over into His care, and then leap into the steps 4, 5, and the rest. So step 2 was a challenge for me because I had some of these thoughts that I already mentioned before, and and so I was asked to go to my notebook and write out what I would describe if I could somehow create or design my ideal God or my ideal higher power at the time. Because I had come to believe in a power greater than myself that was disappointed in me, and that was not available to help me with my addictions, because I had prayed a lot of foxhole prayers and I wasn't receiving any relief. And and so I had come to believe in this sort of judgmental, non-warm, not available God, and a disappointed God in me. And so I started this process where I began to write down who my ideal higher power was, and the attributes that I wanted Him to have, and took it a step further and started to write down what hobbies my ideal higher power would have, and what personality traits. And this list, it included, I wanted to believe that God was a snow skier, one that would go up on the lift with me and that would spend the day with me, that would not just meet me in church, but would also meet me on the ski slopes, and He would come to me as well as me go to Him. I wanted a God that played the guitar, that would allow me to just communicate with Him like I'm communicating with you, and just be really raw and honest and authentic, and not have to just script out what I was saying to Him. I wanted a God that was all forgiving for the things that I'd done, and a God that was always available, and a God that understood addiction, understood the shackles that I was bound with, and a God that could be strong enough to break those shackles for me, regardless of what I'd done, but one that would show up for me and deliver me. And as I wrote out those attributes, I also expressed my resentments towards Him, because I personally was had felt a lot of shame, and as I expressed my resentments, I started to get angry at why would he give me an addiction when other people have used drugs or alcohol, or other people didn't suffer the way that I suffered, and why did he allow me to lose my wife, and why did he allow me to lose my home and lose my career? And I had to blame someone because I was so sick of blaming myself. I just had to point it up, and I let him have it, man. I totally released and dumped out my feelings in this letter, which was a prayer. And as the poison flowed out of me, the love and the embrace engulfed me. And I saw my son's face. And I recognized that there's nothing my son could do that would stop me from loving him. And that was the very spiritual experience I needed to believe in a Heavenly Father who loved me regardless of being an addict, or regardless of what I had done, and that was there for me, arms open. And and as I walked through that experience and started to believe that God would go with me up on the ski slopes, and would spend time with me playing the guitar, and would spend time with me hiking and fishing, and really be there for me as a friend, one that I could just talk to like this, like I said. That was absolutely what was required for me to build this new trust. And I ask you the same question as I wrap up. It's if you have faith, do you believe that he can remove your addiction, remove your struggle, and comfort you through your trial, and use this to help you become the best version of yourself? And if you don't believe that, then this step applies to you. And I invite you to go through that same process and write out what your ideal understanding would be of God, of your Heavenly Father, of your higher power, whatever it is for you. And write out those hobbies, and write out those personality traits, and write out exactly what you wish he would be, and then start praying to that individual. One that's all loving, all forgiving, always available, understands addiction, understands your struggles, because he does. And then as you pour out your heart, you will feel that confirmation that he is actually available. And that will tee us up for where we're going in steps 3, 4, and 5, which is vital to have this trust. But we gotta believe that this power in our lives is interested in helping us with our very struggles, whatever that is for you, whether it's food or sugar addiction, or whether it's heroin, or whether it's obsessing about self-image in the mirror, or comparing to your friends, or whatever your mortal struggle is today. Or maybe you have an addicted loved one that you're constantly worried about and you have anxiety about, or you're suffering from depression and can't find the courage or the motivation, rather, to get out of bed. I get that. I know what that feels like. And I can testify that God helps us in these hours with these details of our lives. And I invite you to come back again next week as we get into step 3 and we build on this foundation. Thank you for chiming in, and thanks for HiFive Live for allowing me to share my personal and intimate journey through these 12 steps, because these are the practical application of the atonement, and they apply to everybody and all of our struggles. And I wish you a happy weekend, and if I can be of service to anyone, please, there is a resource page in the works that soon enough we'll get that available for you. But for now, if you want to go check out some free videos on Brickhouse Recovery TV on YouTube, you'll find that there's a long list of videos that you can subscribe to the channel and be updated on the additional videos that are coming to help you and your loved ones. So have a good morning, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.